Good morning. We are going to go ahead and get started with the recommending committee for August 19th, 2024. And I'm going to ask our city clerk if we are in compliance with the open meeting law.
You are.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 is public comment. Comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. If you're here for public comment, please feel free to step forward now. Come on down and please state your name for the record.
Robin Dickinson, and I own Construction Notebook over at 3131 Meade Avenue. So is this where I tell you what I'm here for exactly?
You're more than welcome now. If you're going to be speaking on the scrap metal ordinance, you can talk at that item too. It's up to you when you want to talk, though.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You can speak now or when the item is called. It's up to you.
Should I wait till the item's called?
It's your choice.
Is there other items?
That'll be the next item coming up, so it's up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else here for public comment?
Good morning. My name is Bradley Hanover, and I wanted to make some comments about what was going on in this ordinance. I work for Robin Dickens on several of her properties, but I'll wait till she's ready.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And hearing and seeing no one else for public comment, we'll close the public comment period. Item number 4 is for possible action to approve the final minutes by reference of the August 5th, 2024 recommending committee meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Please vote and please post. Nice job. And that item passes. And item number 5, bill number 2024-22. This is an abeyance item from our last meeting. For possible action, adopts prohibitions and limitations regarding the purchase of scrap metal consistent with the supplementary to state law on the subject. This is sponsored by myself, and I am going to turn this over to our staff for a presentation first, and then we'll get into questions and comments and proposed amendments. And Mr. Norby, do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So for the record, Joseph Norby, Deputy Public Works Director, City Traffic Engineer. I'll be presenting as well with our DPS, Chief Potts, and his team as well on a couple of these slides. And these slides aren't new, at least to the council. These were generally given earlier this year when we were talking about the rise of copper wire theft. We've retooled the presentation a little bit and worked with City Legal to draft our bill ordinance to get this moving forward. So the copper wire theft continues to be a plague for the city, for our region, and we're not unique. It's happening all across the United States. And a lot of the factors that contribute to this is, you know, how can I get a quick buck? How can we get some money? Generally speaking, you know, it's how can we get quick access to money for cash, for drugs, or other issues. Kind of looking at some statistics, and this is as of the end of last year, 2023, copper wire theft is on the rise, and I guarantee if we projected this out for 2024, it continues to go up. Ironically, this kind of coincides as well with a little bit of the price of copper, recycled copper. It's the end of 23, early 23. That continues to be on the rise as well as a precious commodity. For a little bit of where we see it with the City of Las Vegas more frequently is within our streetlight assets. City of Las Vegas maintains about 61,000 streetlights. Another 10,000 or so park lighting assets, trail lighting assets throughout the city. And these are within public right-of-way, they're within public access, which leads to ease of theft. As of 2023, kind of the end of 2023, this was kind of a map of what we had tracked related to copper wire theft. Primarily on the east side of town, wards 1 and 3, we're feeling the brunt of it as of 2023. As we kind of project that forward, as of 2024, this is the expanded region that we're looking at. We're seeing it's starting to migrate more more west and more north. A lot of this here is us not only just replacing the wire, but as we replace the wire, it is putting some additional countermeasures in place, welding handhole covers, lockable handhole covers, trying to prevent or slow down, at a minimum, the access to the copper wire in the streetlights. Kind of to date, so how does this impact the city of Las Vegas? We're at about 500,000 linear feet, or about 100 miles worth of copper wire that's been stolen in the city. This reflects approximately, kind of our estimate, about 3,200 of our 61,000 streetlights. It's probably a little bit more than that. This is kind of estimated, extrapolating out. And we estimate approximate street value exceeding over $500,000. In labor and materials from the city, from what we've tracked, about $1.5 million specifically for copper wire theft remediation since January of 2022. That equates to about 800 work orders or tasks that we've completed, and impacts our work to about the average of 300 man-hours per month. And I can tell you that kind of helps curb it, but that does not keep us up to date. They steal it a whole lot faster than we replace it. Oftentimes, before we've finished cleaning it all up, they're in there trying to steal it again. After some of our mitigation measures, and you guys have probably started to see this as well, when we've welded handhole covers and they can't get to easy access from the handhole, they are going to the extreme on some of our trails and our parks of unbolting the street lights, lifting it up enough to get the street light or the trail light knocked over, and accessing the copper wire that way. So not only now are we down copper wire, we're also down street light poles and fixtures as well. So there's a kind of some of the things that we've been doing over the last year or so in mitigating. We weld the handhole covers. Unless you have an angle grinder or something out there, it makes it a whole lot more difficult to get into. We're using lockable handhole covers. We're gluing down pull boxes. And we've continued to participate with DPS on the Las Vegas Metro Police Department's metal task force as well, in an effort to curb, and we're working well with them. They've got a Slack channel. They post pictures of copper wire theft or anytime that they get a bust with the group, and we're able to go out and reclaim the stolen assets. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Potts for a little bit and his team, and then we'll stand for any questions that you guys have.
Good morning. For the record, Jason Potts, Chief, Department of Public Safety. Also have Captain Josh Martinez. Captain, if you can join me up here. So we're going to talk about a few things regarding, obviously, our mitigation measures that we've had, but also really what we're trying to pursue here is these low-level thieves. This truly is a shared responsibility. Law enforcement can't do this alone, so we need to come up with good regulation that tackles these unscrupulous buyers and sellers, if you will. There's middle managers, middle people that are involved in some of these thefts as well. But again, we're chasing the low-level thieves. And some of the things that we've done in the past and recently, and Captain Martinez may talk about this, but we do have a tip line. That's our crime prevention hotline that we push out. We have signage to bring some awareness. There's some other things that we're trying to do, really trying to be much more proactive. We have a criminal investigation section that we actually contribute to public safety as well, and our signage has also been helpful. So some of the things that we're doing is, the target hardening. We talk quite a bit about crime prevention through environmental design. Joe briefly talked about that, making sure that we're welding shut hole covers and caps, and just really trying to target hard in these areas and reducing the crime attractors for some of these thieves that are out there. We are leveraging technology. We're pursuing getting our machine learning license plate readers, the Flock Safety Vendor System. I know Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department has had quite a bit of success with these machine learning license plate readers. So placing these in these hot places, these hot people, going after these hot people in these hot times is going to be helpful for us. Obviously, there's encampments around some of these recycling yards. We know that there's 3 in the southeast area in Ward 3 that typically are where our recycling centers are. For this to truly work, this needs to be throughout the valley. North Las Vegas and the county also have to hopefully join with us on this ordinance. You know, in the past, in my previous life, we had some success with GPS bait and trackers and doing stings and that kind of things to keep some of these folks honest in what they're doing. Using informants is also helpful to look at trends and different things. So, and then the leads online, we participate in that. We're hoping we can have a collaborative effort with our recyclers on what's being brought in, using really robust, comprehensive record keeping on the type of wire that's coming in, how we're describing the wire. Even the distinct wire that has been sold is also helpful. There is some technology out there where you think about RFIDs in some of the wire, and even using GPS bait, and we talked about briefly on spools when we start thinking about stings and that kind of thing. But that's probably more of a purview under the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. So quickly, some of the things that we think are the value of this proposed ordinance. We're, again, pursuing the low-level thief. That's the person that's showing up in the shopping cart, that's walking up with metal, and, you know, this ordinance tries to slow this down, if you will. And so we're going to prohibit in this ordinance the walk-up or the person carrying the shopping cart full of metal. We believe it's going to be helpful. Metal not burned in whole or part, and so we're looking to kind of pair that with an affidavit to show that this is legitimate wire that has been burned legitimately, and you know, using an affidavit that Captain may talk about the value in an affidavit that Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is pursuing. And then, of course, the payment, prohibiting a no cash payment to slow down these low-level thieves that are looking for that quick drug fix. And if it is payment, no less than 10 days, unless they hold a business license, and that's, again, business-to-business transactions are going to be helpful. And then Joe has brought some specific metallic wire that we're looking at. So one of the things that they're looking to do is that solid single strand, diameter greater than AWG number 10, which is used in municipal operations and utility operations. So with that, we'll open it up to some questions.
Captain Martinez, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Chief covered everything. I just want to say we've been working with the industry and Chief and his folks as well as the city folks are trying to come to some agreement on what the ordinance could look like for us. And for us, it's going to be the affidavit that the Chief talked about will be useful, and then also creating the exemption for the business-to-business transaction, but then allowing for the personal transactions to have a hold on it would help us for investigative time to see if they're legitimately selling that.
Perfect. And just a couple of comments, then I'm going to ask Mr. Steed if you can read the proposed amendments into the record. So just by way of background, why I got involved in this is when I worked at the city back in 2008, I remember writing a federal grant to help offset the cost to the city for stolen wire. It was a huge issue back in 2008. I imagine it's been kind of up and down since then, is my guess. So the numbers, Mr. Norby, that you presented were really just over the last year, but this is something that's been affecting our municipality for decades.
Right.
And it's not just Las Vegas, it's everywhere around the country. But specifically here in Southern Nevada, it's deeply affecting from a financial, from a safety perspective, every entity that I work with. And so to that end, I've talked to representatives in North Las Vegas, the county, and Henderson, and I believe all 3 jurisdictions have an intent to use the language that if we're able to pass that ordinance here, that they would incorporate similar language in their jurisdiction. So it's a regional-wide effort to hopefully curb what we've seen here is not just a financial impact to the city, but also a significant safety impact to the city as well, because for my colleagues up here, I get calls all the time about lights that randomly go out, and you can see there's traffic issues around that. There's pedestrians hit because of that. It's a life safety issue as well. So, Mr. Norby, do you know what the other jurisdictions are doing from a public works perspective?
So their tactics are similar to ours. Replace with aluminum wire. Aluminum wire carries a significantly less recycle value. welding handhold covers. In some instances, they're swapping from going underground wiring to overhead wiring. We have not done that yet. We've maintained overhead wire where we've done overhead wire, but we have not replaced underground wire with overhead wire yet. It is, obviously, it's an aesthetic thing, and we're trying to be respectful of some of the neighbors the best we can. But in some instances where damage beyond putting back copper wire underground is preventable, either to damage or some other issues, we have done some temporary overhead strands to feed streetlight wires again. And a lot of us in the valley are in the same boat. It's how can we keep up with them as fast as they can steal it?
I think I heard the county was considering painting their wire or buying a different color wire so that when it does get stolen, they can track it easier. So everyone's trying to be very creative about how to mitigate the impact of this issue in our community. So with that being said, for everyone representing the industry, that was always my intent, is no real intention of hurting an industry. That has nothing to do with this. This has to do with life safety and the financial costs to each of our jurisdictions in Southern Nevada. But in the last meeting, we asked for a couple of weeks, because if there's opportunity to compromise, that's great. I certainly don't want to hurt anybody. And so I think Mr. Steed, he got the brunt of compromising responsibility, and I appreciate him doing that. Do you mind, Mr. Steed, talking about the amendments that were different from last meeting to this meeting, and then your recommendation?
I'll do that, Councilman. The original bill didn't make a lot of distinction between metallic wire and other kinds of scrap metal. Scrap metal is the larger category, and metallic wire is a subset of that. And there were requests to narrow it down, and we heard testimony that the main focus was wire as opposed to other things. So we were asked both by staff to look at some amendments, and also Mr. Warren Hardy, representing elements of the industry, asked us to narrow the scope of it, and also to provide a kind of a business-to-business exemption from this chapter. So what we did, and this was not consensus by any means on the definition of wire, which is why I don't have something concrete to put in front of you, but we had settled on the term specified metallic wire as being scrap metal in the form of solid single-strand or multi-strand wire made of non-ferrous material that A has a diameter equal to or greater than the diameter of AWG number 10 wire, and is typically used in municipal or utility operations, but can be used in commercial, industrial, institutional, and other applications as well. We exempted out also a new section, and I'll read that, an attempt to capture Mr. Hardy's idea of a business-to-business exemption, and that would read this way. Sorry, it's kind of long. This chapter does not apply to any transaction in scrap metal, including specified metallic wire, between a seller and a buyer if A, the seller is the holder of or principal of the holder of a state of Nevada business license, any other state level license is necessary to engage in such a transaction, and any city business license necessary to engage in such a transaction, and B, the buyer qualifies to engage in such a transaction under NRS Chapter 647, including without limitation, 1, holding a state of Nevada business license and any other state-level licenses necessary to engage in such a transaction. 2, holding an authorization from or registration with the Southern Nevada Health District as the local solid waste management authority. And 3, holding any city business license necessary to engage in such a transaction. That's the language that I would put forward, understanding that it doesn't have consensus, but I think that captures at least most of what was asked for, both by staff and the industry last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Steed. So Mr. Norby and Chief Potts and Captain Martinez, with the proposed amendments, are we still meeting the objective in your minds?
Yeah, for the record, we do. I believe we are, and this wasn't discussed, but this copper theft epidemic, if you will, throughout the country. I mean, wire right now is being sold. I just did a search this morning at $4.65 per pound, and it's attacking our critical infrastructures. It's not just lights. It's cell towers, it's critical infrastructures that have an impact on safety in this country, and we need to get ahead of it. And this is our opportunity to do that and to go after those low-level thieves. You know, we saw the value with our catalytic converter theft legislation. You know, they were attacking, going after these precious metals, rhodium, palladium, and platinum. And as you know, this is helped. It's actually deterred it quite a bit. We talk quite a bit about it's a shared responsibility. We have to prevent this and deter it, and it's important that we do. And so this, I believe this ordinance has a significant amount of value. It's not perfect. We still have those middlemen that do actually sell this stuff out in California, Arizona, and Utah. But you know, this is a start, and I applaud you for bringing it forward, MPT.
And if I could just maybe add a few comments as well. We realize this is probably a stopgap measure. You know, that until this is something's done on a state level with some heavier penalties and some other things. But this is something that we can do as a city now to get the ball rolling. I know there's legislative efforts that are already in place or moving forward for this next legislative session to kind of get this on the books. Much like the catalytic converters, how do we target the thieves to make it to where, hey, not in our state, not in our town. And I think this is a good start. It's a good faith effort for us to then take to the legislative session to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and we need the continued backing from our state legislators as well to be able to help enforce this in a manner to where we drive this down. People will think twice about stealing copper wire. They're already doing it with catalytic converters. People are now to the point to where they don't want to be caught with one in their possession out of fear. And we want to an extent, kind of incite this same type of feeling when it comes to our copper wire. It is a safety issue. You know, traffic crashes on our roadways are up, pedestrian fatalities are on a rise, and the more streetlights that go out, the more vulnerable we are as a community to some of these incidents happening.
Thank you.
I just want to say from the Metro perspective, we just appreciate the opportunity that you gave us to work with the city on this, and then also we've been working with the industry, as I said. And we think it is a starting point for us to try to put a stopgap measure until we could get up to Carson City and maybe look at something that's more in depth, but working with the industry, I know that we're trying to get to, you know, even talking to the other jurisdictions, that 7 strand, and I'm not the expert, or is Metro the expert in the public works field, so we're leaving that up to the cities, and we're just trying to educate ourselves on that, and I know the industry as well, they're talking about the 7 strand or a little bit more specific on that, but we just appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Norby, can you comment on wire?
And yeah, if I could, I brought some samples here. It's a little bit, and I'm not going to throw these up to you guys, but typically for education purposes, this is what the wire is under the ground. We keep it in colors red, white, black, and then a green, or typically when they're protected look like this. So when we talk about a 7 strand, if we kind of pull one of these apart, there's usually, when we talk 7-stranded wire, there's 7 individual strands that make up the wire. Typically for our streetlight wire, that's the case. Not always, but probably a good majority of the time it's a 7-strand. This is what we call a number 4, which is the wire size. But in the industry, we are exposed to a lot more. Vast majority of all of our streetlight wiring is going to be of this size. We get into our traffic signal, and it's a little bit different. So our traffic signal wire, this is a 12-strand wire, and then we also use fairly heavily in the region a 25-strand wire. This is what connects our traffic signals and keeps our traffic systems running. I will say, for the most part, our traffic signals have been safe when it comes to copper wire theft. Not always. These thieves, when they don't know what they're doing, they'll cut anything, they'll open up any box and pull any wire. Additionally, we talk about, you know, the municipal side versus the utility side. When we start getting into what feeds the power from the Nevada Energy side, we start getting into something a little bit thicker. As you can see, these are not 7 strands. These get to be multiple strands as they get larger. Whereas they may not take off lengthwise with as much of this, you can tell it's a whole lot more and has a lot more value to it. And so Where I think the 7 strand's a good start, it might not be a catch-all for all type of wire that gets stolen or that we have as assets in the ground, but it's definitely a starting point. And it's also an easily identifiable when they take it to a recycling center and they strip it down, and it's still, it's stripped, but it pretty much looks like that, all coiled up. They can easily look at it and say, yep, there's 7 strands in there. That's very indicative of a streetlight wire, and it's a very quick and easy way of identifying where the wire might have come from.
Can I ask him, maybe it's a silly question, but what does it take to burn it? Like when we're talking about burning it, how does that happen?
So there's a couple ways to get this outer coating off. You've got some that have very elaborate, I'll say elaborate, but not so elaborate ways of stripping that jacketing off. And it's pretty much just running the wire between 2 blades, and the center copper comes out, and the sheathing here just becomes, they coil up and throw it in a dumpster. The alternative way is, if you don't have capability of stripping it off quickly, is to burn or to melt the jacketing off. And I'm not going to say it can't be done. It's a little bit more tedious for sure, but that would leave, I think as Chief kind of talked about it, burn marks. So this becomes a little more black as a result of being burnt off. And so that's just a couple of the ways. I know for me, if you've done any electrical work at your house, if you don't have the right wire stripper and you're sitting there trying to cover off, it becomes very tedious and cumbersome. And if you're homeless or running something out of a ditch somewhere or behind someone's business or outside of a recycling yard, then it's just one more effort. Why they take this jacketing off is when I take it to a recycling center, I can get a lot more value if it's clean, stripped down, than I can if I just turn it in with all the jacketing on. And I don't know what those prices are. I'm sure our guys from industry can tell you the difference in those prices, but it's probably a half to a quarter the total price if you can bring it in stripped out.
So it's one of the questions that I have is, it's not for you, it's in my head all the time, is because I'm taking my kids to school every morning, I drive past Area 15, so there's a drainage ditch between the 15 and the road right in front of Area 15, and I can see people pushing carts down the street, and I can see the wire that they've found, taken, and then I see little fires along the ditch, and so I've always been wondering, like, what is it that, what are they burning in a ditch? And that encampment in that ditch right now is probably 50 to 75 people. It's an intense encampment, and they're hidden very, very well in a ditch. And then you see fires sporadically on any given day. And so this is my assumption of kind of what's happening, given that there's a recycling plant right nearby. And so part of the reasoning for me to be so engaged in this is that I drive past it every single day on my way to school. I got a summer break, I guess. I just got back to it. But that is one of the reasons why I think this is important, is trying to curb the safety, because of the amount of fires that I've had in Ward 1 this year. I know Ward 3 has seen dramatically more fires this year, and I think you can tie at least some of that to this, and that's an assumption on my part. I'm not saying it's truth, it's just an assumption.
Yeah, it's probably not far-fetched assumption there.
Yeah.
I'd side with you on that one.
For my colleagues, do you want to ask any questions, and then I'll open it up for public comment?
No, go ahead. I think this one's directed at Norby. The Nevada Power wire that you showed, that seems, I didn't feel it, but it looks heavier, right?
It is, and if you don't mind, maybe I'll just kind of run a couple of these.
Looks heavier, presumably it's heavier. Is this often targeted as well by thieves?
That is targeted almost equally as much as streetlight wiring is. So they can get into the back, if they can get into the back of the service pedestal, those larger wires are typically what's run between the service pedestal and the Nevada Energy Transformer, either up on the pole or on the ground. Within, you're talking upwards of 100 to 300 feet away for some of those larger wire diameter.
I'm surprised we don't have Nevada Energy here in support, because clearly the ratepayer is holding the bag when that is
Well,
done.
and sometimes that larger wire is either community-owned, so it's city-owned. We are responsible for pulling that back, and sometimes there's this we're dividing line. They've gone back and forth over the years of who owns that connection between the service and their transformer. I think currently it's back to anything new is Nevada Energy owned, but it's ping-ponged back and forth a little bit between being agency owned and Nevada Energy owned.
Okay. And while I have you subject matter experts up here, I'd just like to bring back the discussion we had at the end of the last recommending committee in regards to which wire we should include. Val's amendment seems pretty broad. My question, I guess, ultimately is, if copper is the target and we're transitioning to aluminum wire, but that still could be an interesting wire for people to steal, even if it's the difference between $4 per pound and $1 per pound. But as we've identified, people with addiction issues are desperate for money, even small amounts. So would it not be comprehensive to put in the bill copper wire and aluminum wire and not have such a broad approach? My concern is there are 3 recyclers, of course, we've already discussed this, within the city limits, and we don't know. I'm glad the counties and the other jurisdictions are doing something, but we don't know what they're going to do. Therefore, I would hate for our 3 operators to have an economic disadvantage in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think we've changed the language a little bit. So I think we've taken the word copper out, and I think it's non-ferrous metal, right?
Yes.
So I think we've changed that. So yes, it doesn't matter whether I bring copper, aluminum, whatever that may be. If it kind of fits these parameters, then it should send off the red flags.
Right, I get it. It's more broad than it was.
Right.
And I'm sure the folks from industry, when they get their turn, are going to talk about this. But while you're up here, can you articulate why we should be so broad as to not focus on the 2 metals that affect us in the city of Las Vegas the most?
I think copper and aluminum are generally the only 2 you're going to see. I think we just kind of keep it at that as a catch-all. We see wire coming in, it's going to be fairly quickly indicative of what the source it's coming from. And I think that doesn't just target us from a traffic signal streetlight side, it impacts the construction industry as well. We've got copper wire that runs through residential, and the task force with Metro, they've identified a lot of construction sites that also see not just copper wire theft, but other construction material theft as well. That they track down and that they're keeping track of as well. So I think from an industry standpoint, it's broad. I don't think it just covers us, but it covers all of the community and all the players in there. I mean, HVAC systems and everything else that goes with it.
If I could say something, I think the low-level thieves don't always know the difference between the aluminum and the copper, and so they're going to target it anyway. So.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much. And I'm going to open this up for public comment for anybody who'd like to come on down. We'll limit the time to 3 minutes. And please state your name for the record.
Members of the committee, Warren Hardy, representing SA Recycling, Champion Recycling.
And Mo Dennis, representing Las Vegas Recycling.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, part of my concern with this whole thing, we're open as an industry to doing whatever we can to help. It was us, the industry, that put into statute the requirements that you give a fingerprint, that you give a driver's license, that you give all this information when you sell materials. Nobody's more invested or interested in stopping this kind of problem than we are. The folks you're talking about here, in terms of not just the bad actors, but people that are legitimately bringing wire and other things to our locations, is such a de minimis small part of our business, we don't care. Our concern is the impact that we'll have going forward. And just let me describe for you what happens when somebody brings any kind of scrap metal to one of our locations. You walk in, you provide the material, we weigh it, and we pay you. But before we pay you, we get your driver's license. We get your address. We get your fingerprint. So what's the reality of it is, the people that are still in this copper wire aren't bringing it to us because they know they're going to have to give up those 3 things. And for years, my client, if we had any suspicion at all, we wouldn't accept it. We accept it now, and the reason we accept it now is because of our relationship with Metro and the task force or the working group that we have. We will accept this material, we will set it aside, and we will call Metro. Somebody just brought in 10 pounds of 7-strand copper wire, come down and look at it. They'll come down and look at it, but guess what else we give them? We give them the seller's driver's license, fingerprints, home address, type of vehicle. We give them all the information. We ought to be focusing our efforts on trying to drive these bad actors to bring it to us. What this ordinance will do, and we're fine with most of this ordinance, but what this ordinance will do will just further push these bad actors to the unlicensed dealers. Go on Google right now and Google how to get rid of copper wire, how to get rid of materials. Go on Facebook, go on Craigslist, go on OfferUp. They're out there, and what they will do is take it illegally. They'll ship it to California, Arizona. They're not bringing the wire to us. So as far as I'm concerned, if you want to just not allow us to accept 7-strand copper wire unless it's a business-to-business transaction, pass that. Because they're not bringing it to us. The bad actors aren't bringing it to us. We have accepted and are willing to accept the portion of the ordinance that says we can't accept it from a walk-in, can't accept any scrap metal, by the way, any scrap metal from a walk-in or somebody that brings it in with a shopping cart. We don't want that. That brings trouble to us. Our problem is those people sometimes get violent with us. Trust me, the second this ordinance goes up, we're going to put up big signs that say per city ordinance. I'm out of time.
You can.
Okay, thank you. Per city ordinance, we're not accepting, we won't accept this. That's a dream come true for us. We don't want anything to do with those guys. But what we do care about is the 99.5% of our business that is business-to-business transaction. And to the extent that any of this implicates that and creates problems, it will do exactly what the councilwoman said and put us at a competitive disadvantage with everybody else. If they have to wait to get paid 10 days businesses for anything, they're not going to bring it to us. They're going to take it to someone in the county. They're going to take it to somewhere else. What we have done proactively as an industry have gone out. The Legislative Interim Committee on Government Affairs is going to introduce legislation. We're introducing legislation that's going to follow exactly the success of the catalytic converter law. It's going to make it illegal to possess this information, or these restricted materials. And that's what we're going to do in the regulation, or in the ordinance, in the statute, excuse me. We're going to identify restricted materials. It'll include 7-strand copper wire. It'll include the other types of wire that your folks from public utilities want. It's also going to include a certain type of proprietary battery for the RTC. It'll also likely include manhole covers. It'll also likely include backflow preventers that are identifiable to the utility. So that's the broader solution to this. Much of what's in the ordinance, and I appreciate Mr. Steed and Councilman Knudsen for allowing us to work, we're fine with it. But the broadness of the definition of wire, it was already testified to that the overwhelming majority is 7-strand copper wire. Let's put 7-strand copper wire in the ordinance. Quit messing with the rest of it that has the potential through trial and error to damage our businesses. Let's go after 7-strand copper wire. I promise you, once we get the statute that applies to everybody in place, this problem's going to stop. Catalytic converters was the biggest problem. We led the country in catalytic converters. Catalytic converter theft is virtually gone in Southern Nevada because it is a felony to possess 2 or more catalytic converters, or more than 2 catalytic converters. Same thing will happen here. What we have to do is we have to go after the third-party, or unlicensed third parties who are taking this stuff offline. We spoke with the sheriff this week. He is committed to put together a sting or a task force to go after some of these folks. Are super easy to find. Google it. I'll say, we'll buy your car without a title. That's illegal too. It's the same people. That's who we have to target. If I sound a little exercised, I apologize, but through my 30 years in this business, we always come after the industry because that's the easy place, that's the low-hanging fruit. Nobody here said this to me, but as I talked to people in other jurisdictions, they said, well, Metro's just not going to focus on it. Well, Metro works for you. Make them focus on it. And by the way, that's not the conversation I've had with the sheriff. The sheriff has been bent over backwards, but he understands the impact this potentially has on the industry. We want to fix this, but we want to do something that's really going to fix it, not put the recyclers in Las Vegas, that operate in Las Vegas at a competitive disadvantage. We are so close on the ordinance, Mr. Chairman. Just narrow the wire to 7-strand copper wire. Let's see how that works. If we have to add more going forward, let's add more. But the ultimate solution is going to be to outlaw the possession of that. And the idea of having copper wire that is identifiable to the city utility by color or by anything else, something I suggested 10 years ago. Then we can put that in an ordinance. But again, putting it in an ordinance that prohibits us from buying it and them from selling it, you gotta stop them from possessing it. Worked for catalytic converters, it'll work for wire. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis, I gave him 4 minutes more than he was supposed to have.
Thanks.
If you're not repetitive, I will do the same for you, but if you can keep it brief.
Yeah, no, I thank you very much, Mo Dennis, representing in Las Vegas Recycling. I am not going to repeat because we agree. As an industry, we're working together because we understand that there is a problem, right? And we want to be a part of that solution. But as Mr. Hardy already mentioned, there's so many things that we're already doing in addition to all that he talked about. We have video. We want to be partners. And as he mentioned, we met with the sheriff. We think that this ordinance will help partially slow things down, but the real intent is to get rid of those middlemen. And our meeting with the sheriff was very productive, and we think that will work. But I agree. I think we're really close. I think we want to work together and do something. And in our discussions with the other municipalities as well, they're waiting to see what happens here so that we can all be together and have one unified way of going after these guys.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks.
And this is a public comment period. For anybody else that would like to come on down, now is your time.
And Mr. Chairman, I apologize if I just could mention, we'd be happy to meet with Chief Potts on this wire, look at it, see what we believe is proprietary, to include that in the definition as well. But we just want to focus it on utility wire.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Robin Dickinson, Construction Notebook, 3131 Mead. So I'm not as elegant as these people. All I can tell you is I'm 200 feet away from Champion Recycling. And we're a 75-year-old company, and we've been in this location on Mead Avenue since 1982. So about 2010, when they moved in, our business functioning has changed. So I'm having to put in, I'm having to hire people to keep the people who are selling to these people off my property. I've had to call Metro, and they won't do anything about them stealing my power, literally, my water. We've had people that build giant fires on my property 10 feet away from one of my tenants, one of his buses. And the thing is, we've called Metro, they won't deal with it, and we've called the fire department. They're saying just hose them off. Well, do you know how dangerous that is? I mean, me alone, that's a little dangerous for me. My tenants have moved out, so I'm just saying, I understand business to business, I get that. They have to run a business. But we have to slow down the people that are coming down the street like a freeway with all these things sticking out, and cars are dodging them, and it's just a freeway all the way down to the recycling plant. So if we could just limit the people who go there, it would help immensely. And I understand they have to do a business. I have to do a business. But if one business interrupts my business, I'm spending $10,000 to $15,000 in the last few years on getting these people out, shoving them out. And the destruction is just incredible, incredible. So I'd like to really, I think I sent everyone my letter, but if we could just slow it down to people who aren't in carts and aren't in, pushing things, it would help immensely. Thank you.
You were very eloquent. Thank you very much. Anybody else here for public comment?
Hello, my name is Bradley Hanover, and I run a maintenance company, and I do quite a bit of the work and quite a bit of the cleanup from the homeless people that have moved into the back of Robin Dickens's property. Behind her property is an easement for a power line and power poles, and repeatedly the electric company has told her that they aren't in charge of that it's not their responsibility. I think it is, and they should have done something about it a long time ago. The particular person that I removed from her property myself had started many, many fires. He was running a cook shop for the other homeless people in the area where he cooked their food on his burners, and he used the rest of that easement to stack up his recyclables, which included everything you could possibly think of other than wire. And I've noticed one thing about this hearing today, that the majority of it was about how Clark County and how the government has been affected by this and what you're going to do to help Clark County and help the people that run the power poles and the electric poles outside. Well, what about her? I didn't hear a word about what you were going to do to stop these homeless people from entering her property. As she said, she called the police many, many times over the last 8 years, and nothing was done, nothing at all. It was all just talk. And the best thing you could possibly do for any of this is to actually start prosecuting the people that are doing the stealing and prosecuting the people in felonies for tearing down these poles and destroying everything in the area. You can't park there in her driveway anymore because of the people that are there. And my size and my demeanor, they don't mess with me very much, and I've been forced to remove them from her property over and over and over again. And the pictures I've seen and the damage this has caused and the price that it has cost the city, and you won't do anything to jail these people or stop them from doing this. And that's all I have to say today.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else here for public comment?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Tony Celeste, address 1980 Festival Plaza Drive, here on behalf of Fisher Brothers. We did submit for the record a letter in support. I have a copy of it here, and we'll also just turn it into the clerk's office for that. We, on behalf of Fisher Brothers, we do think this is a good first step and encourage the council members to continue looking at measures that further restrict the sale of the stolen materials from private properties. And we thank you for your time and consideration on this very important matter. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Mr. Norby, we have a question for you if you can make your way up. And if I don't see anybody else standing up in the next minute, I'm going to close the public comment period.
Has this been effective in other cities? Have these measures that we're taking? Do we know? Did we do research?
So we've done a little bit of research looking at some other agencies. I know Joey Paskey, who is out of town, would have been here today in my place, would have preferred it. She was in Denver, Colorado recently, and I think with a handful of the council folks in our planning department as well. And they've had some strong measures related to copper wire theft or metal theft, and it has been fairly successful, to the point where she made a comment as part of that. There's a couple feet of copper wire, and she was astonished and made mention to somebody there from the city county of Denver, and they're like, yeah, nobody wants to touch it because they don't want to get busted for it. So I think it is something we're starting to see more and more be picked up by other agencies and trying to mimic what's happening in other regions.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we've closed public comment period. Here's my suggestion is, I think I have tried, I know Mr. Steed's tried to find compromise. I think on the business-to-business transactions, we made some changes there. On the definition of wire, I'm inclined to take the recommendations of staff, but I'm also very committed to making sure that I don't hurt anybody. I will be making sure that the county and cities of Henderson and North Las Vegas are somewhat aligned to the best of my ability to honor my commitment to Metro and Captain Martinez. And any changes that happen in the legislature in the next session, I'm more than happy to come back and revisit this ordinance. And like it was mentioned, this is somewhat of a stopgap, trying to do everything we can to make the city a bit safer. If there are changes in the legislative session that would warrant changing this particular ordinance, I honor I honor the work being done by everybody, and I would absolutely commit to coming back and making adjustments to this ordinance. But my motion is going to be to approve this ordinance with the amendment suggested by Mr. Steed. So it would be Amendment 1.
Let's call it a second because we previously had a First Amendment before you.
So a motion to approve with amendment number 1 and 2, suggested by Mr. Steed today. Please.
I'm going to go ahead and vote in favor of moving the bill forward as you made the motion, but I am concerned about the broad nature of the definition of wire to impact the businesses, and I guess we'll discuss it further at a city council meeting and the other layers of government you mentioned. Just, I guess, as a note to the operators, nobody wants to put you at an economic disadvantage or at essentially putting you less competitive. Not what we want to do. We have to make a strong, decisive showing on behalf of the city, because if we don't, when we go to the legislature and demand action on their part, because we have to do something, if we haven't done everything we can on our end, I think the state's going to say, well, why haven't you tried to do A, B, and C first? So this is the intent.
And that motion passes. This bill will be eligible for adoption at the City Council meeting on September 4th, 2024. We're moving on to number 6, Bill number 2024-23 for possible action, amends the Lone Mountain Master Development Plan and Design Standards to provide that the use animal hospital, clinic, or shelter without outside pens is permitted as conditional use within the neighborhood commercial land use designation. This is sponsored by Councilwoman Frances Allen Polensky. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seth Floyd for the record. And Mr. Chairman, first, just kind of a housekeeping matter. So even though this is, the Lone Mountain Plan is in Ward 4, this is actually going to be a staff-sponsored ordinance. So I just wanted to make sure that's reflected on the record. And then with that, pretty straightforward, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lowenstein to go through what this change actually is and what it does, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
Good morning, Peter Lowenstein for the record. So as read into the record, this does introduce the animal hospital, clinic, or shelter without outside pens into the Lone Mountain Master Development Plan. It makes it a conditional use. Those conditions refer back to Title 19 C1 for limited commercial conditional use requirements for the proposed use. Those include the use having access to a collector street or larger. Animals shall happen to be confined in an enclosed building at all times. The building shall be designed to provide complete sound barriers and odor protection from adjacent properties. It also addresses rooms containing cages are not to have windows or doors or other penetrations adjacent to any residences, as well as noise levels must comply with Title VII, and no more than 25% of the floor area may be used for the boarding of animals. This is consistent with our C1 zoning district, and we believe it is appropriate in the Lone Mountain Master Development Plan. Thank you.
And this is a public comment portion of the agenda. Anybody would like to comment on this bill? Hearing and seeing none. Any questions up here? And entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
We have a motion. Please vote and post. And that item passes. Moving on to item number 7, Bill number 2024-24 for possible action updates fee tables pertaining to fees chargeable under the city's administrative code for construction activity, primarily to bring them into line with fees actually being charged, but also to increase certain fees related to annual permits, and authorizes the city traffic engineer and the Department of Public Works to designate another department or function to charge and collect fees related to work within public rights-of-way as governed by LVMC 11.50.040 and LVMC Title 13. This is proposed by our Public Works Director, Joey Paskey.
So, Mr. Chairman, Seth Floyd for the record. So I'm actually not sure how this got assigned to Joey. Her piece of the bill is like 2 words. The rest of it is with the building department. So I think if it's okay with you, I'll have Michael Cunningham, our certified building official, explain this bill and then mention Ms. Paskey's very small piece of the bill at the end.
Thank you. I did not understand this bill at all, so I'm glad you're here to tell me about it.
Yeah, for the record, or good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. For the record, Michael Cunningham, Deputy Community Development Director and Building Official for the City of Las Vegas. So this ordinance has two components. The first component really just impacts the building enterprise fee table, and then the second piece designates an authority for us to be able to charge fees. And so I'll quickly go over each section of it, and then I'll be able to ask any questions, answer any questions. So to kind of start out, we did a fee study several years back, and when we do our process, we hire a consultant. We're cost-based on the enterprise fund side, so we're just supposed to recover the cost that it spends us to do our plan review and inspections. They do their analysis, they give us a recommendation. We then take that, compare it to the rest of the jurisdictions, and where we're at, and decide if we want to increase or not. So when we did that last increase, there's certain fees on ours that we don't get a lot of, stadiums, amusement parks, that we don't really have a good background on what to charge, and so we've kind of kept it at our hourly rate of $176 until we get some data. When we did that fee increase, those fees weren't supposed to be adjusted. So historically, they're supposed to stay at $176. Some of them got increased. And so this is gonna bring those back to what we historically would charge if those permit types came in. One other thing I wanted to just mention, because it typically comes up when we talk about our fee schedules, in our admin section, we do have the ability to increase our fees through a CPI if needed. Over the last few years since our last increase, we haven't had to. We've been able to cover our expenses through the permit activity that we have, but that is in there if we need to utilize it in the future. So I'll go over, the first section is section 2. This is a part of our fee table that covers pre-manufactured dwellings. Again, this was one of those fees. It's typically just $176 an hour. When we did that increase last time, we accidentally increased it by I think it was about 10%. This is just reflecting that to come down to the $176 that we historically would have charged for that permit type. We don't get a lot of these. Pre-manufactured buildings are handled by the state, so it's very rare that we get involved with them. But again, so the fee's going from, I think, the mid-180s down to $176. Section 3 is the amusement park structure. This one's a deposit only. This is one of those permit types we don't get many of. Matter of fact, since I've been here, I don't think we've had a full amusement park. We get rides, individual, like at Neonopolis and at Area 15, but not a full amusement park. This one, again, just modifying that fee down to the $176 to be the deposit only for our hourly rate. Section 4 is a stadium. Unfortunately, we have not gotten a stadium yet, maybe in the future. But so we don't have a good number on what we should charge for that. So again, the deposit's supposed to be I think that one's actually $185, but we're bringing that down to what we historically would have charged if we did get a stadium. And then we have section 5 and 6. Those are both for commercial and residential respectively. This fee is for a scenario where a permit comes in and they say it's electrical only. Through the plan review process, we determine we need to add a structural review. That's what this fee is for. Again, that should be the $176 instead of the mid-180s, so that's just bringing that back down to the $176. And then section 7 is foundation non-high-rise. Typically, it's a foundation-only permit. We don't get a lot of these either. You're going to get them more for the Civic Center building. We did a foundation-only. The Symphony Park building is going up. Those are all foundation-only. Circo is a foundation-only. A non-high-rise building, we don't get a lot of them. And again, this is just to bring that hourly rate back down to what it should be. And then the last one is section 8. This is the one fee that did go up. This is our annual facilities permit. So this is a program we've had in place for several years now. We haven't had anyone take advantage of it. When the Universal folks at Area 15 first came in, we had talked about this, and it's something that they would like to take advantage of. Since they use it at a couple of their other facilities. We went back and we looked at it just to make sure everything was in order, since we haven't had one. And so that one, the fee went slightly up. There's an annual registration fee that went, let me get over to it. So for the plan check, it was $113. That's going up to $500. That's our cost to kind of analyze their qualification to be within the annual facilities program, because only certain businesses can be in it. We don't want, it's not for small business, it's large buildings that need to do frequent TIs with minor work. So that fee is for us to analyze that. And then the inspection fee, there's an initial inspection that we needed to do to go out there to just make sure everything's in order before they start doing any additional additional work. Previously, there was no fee for that, but there's an initial inspection that we forgot we needed, and so that's that fee. And then the inspection fee, once the annual first facilities permit is issued, is just to match our 176. So it's going from $173 to $176, and that would be for any submittals that come in during that annual facilities program. And then the section 9, there was a section at the bottom of our fee table that we published. It was called other construction fees. That was inadvertently kept on the public table. That was really more internal notes. Those were fees that we were looking at potentially implementing. We never moved forward with any of those, so that whole section is just being deleted. They were never implemented, and we don't have any plans on implementing them. So we deleted that section. And then the last portion of the ordinance, that's the small public works section. So back in, I think it was 2009, is before I started at the city, the land development division was moved to building and safety. All the fees we collect under that are general fund fees, but we technically charge it under a public works fee schedule. The ordinance was never updated to actually designate us as the department able to charge those, so we're adding the word in there, designee. So it says can be charged by public works director or designee, and we're adding that to the public works section and the traffic engineering section, which will officially give us the authority to charge the fees that we collect for those permits and inspections. And that is all the ordinance, so I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
You did a great job. One thing I can say that I never get to see very often, but in all of the meetings that I have around developers and people talking about working with the city, your name comes up a lot. Everyone on the outside thinks you're an absolutely amazing building official. So
thank you.
I trust you implicitly because everybody else in the world trusts you, and I wish I could spend more time with you, but thank you for doing a great job in representing the city well. With that, I'm going to move to approve. And that item passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you.
I did not. Anyone want to talk about that? Open public comment and closing public comment. Sorry, Mr. Attorney, thanks for keeping us legal. Each bill moved out of committee today will be eligible for adoption at the City Council meeting of September 4th, 2024. And if I stole your public comment time in the last item, you now have public comment again. This is citizen participation. Anybody who would like to speak on any of the items today or anything else within the purview of the recommending committee, please come forward now. And hearing and seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.